Uh, First, I would like to thank the organizers and Milena especially for inviting me to talk with you here about the narrative. Um, I can't see is I can't see any of you. Just for your sake. Um, when when they approached me to talk as someone who deals with storytelling and writing all different forms of stories and narratives, we had a little discussion first, and that was like, what what can I talk about? And it was a subject where a lot of speeches here are about really technical stuff and focusing on really specific subjects. And so we came to a conclusion that maybe we should say something about screenwriting and narrative that any CGI artist can find interesting, both in VFX and gaming industry and so forth. So I came up with something that looked like how to write and read a script. Better understanding of written text for visual artists that have to do all these tasks that are inside of every script. And I started working on that, and I wrote stuff how script came to be and da 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 da. And as I was writing that, I was thinking about all the people that are actually working inside of VFX studios. And then I realized that every time that I came to one of these studios, whether it was gaming or VFX, I never heard anything uh, related to a script. So I concluded that people who do CGI are really, really far away in the pipeline from the script. So anything that I can give to you guys would be interesting, but not really useful. And then I had a problem, and I have to find out what else am I going to write about, since my script theme has fall apart. So I came back to myself and I was like, okay, if I cannot help you guys understand the script, or maybe there are too much references that you won't get it, maybe I should just be simple and ask you guys to hear how I look at the studios. So basically, I turned the whole theme around, and it was like, maybe it's not about what you can get from the narrative, but what do you bring into the narrative. And this came from my first time when I actually entered VFX studios, which was an experience that was amazing, in a sense that even though studios look like such an ordinary offices, a bunch of computers and a bunch of people, but from my perspective, as someone who has spent his entire childhood looking at movies and animations and cartoons and whatnot, entering a VFX studio was like a kid entering a candy factory. So this is how it's all made. All these images that I have seen in my lifetime that have influenced me more than some of the real events in my life are on these screens. I mean, I still remember I was like 5 or 6, and for the first time I saw Terminator 2. And as a kid, I saw the scene where Sarah Connor is grabbing the fence of a playground, and everything, the entire frame just goes into an apocalypse. Now, I am a 6-year-old. I have never imagined that entire world can burn in just a few seconds. And after seeing the Terminator 2, I remember distinctly walking out of my friend's apartment and into my apartment, and I looked at the world around me differently. Like, these stairs, this house, this building, this door, everything can just disappear in a second. Is that right? And my mom was like, where were you? And I was at my friend's house, everything's okay, but it wasn't okay. My whole perspective of life changed when I saw that scene. And now I'm in the building where actual people are looking at this, and I'm walking through the studio like I'm 6 years old again. And it was really an amazing experience. That's what I saw on every screen. A different creature being made on objects, models turning into life, animating, simulating, and the dynamic work on all the particles and everything else, and it was just coming to life, and it was amazing. That's what I saw for the first time in a VFX studio. What I heard for the first time was completely opposite, and it was a bunch of people that were sounding, how to describe it? They sounded like how you imagine an Excel sheet sounds like bunch of pipelines and something about some segments and something about prioritizing a server room and some completely opposite of what I saw on the screens. And I was really like, don't these people realize that they're making magic after hours? They didn't. They were really running up to finish the deadline, and this all came up to. They missed the whole thing. Later on, I came back to different VFX studios, and now my role was different. I was there professionally as a producer or a director, and I had a whole experience that you can get in a VFX studios, working late hours, staying overtime, sleeping underneath the feet of the animators, looking at a screen and seeing it crash, and then that little pause on the end where you just like kind of stare into the abyss, and before you rip every cable out and then restart the whole thing, hoping that what we just did, and the whole routine of waiting for the render to complete, then looking it over and stuff like that. And every time that I saw that, for me, I still grabbed the sense of what we are doing in the end. So the whole time I was still getting the experience, okay, this is all technicalities, this is all a routine, this is a pipeline, this has to go like this. But in the end, we are going to get that magical impression of something never unseen before opening in front of my eyes. Sean Connery playing a dragon, amazing. And when I started writing writing the notes and what am I going to say, I was like, maybe I should give these people hope. Maybe I should try to explain to them how their job looks from my side and how we are all a part of one big narrative. So, but then I had to go back to the beginning and realize, okay, so let's talk about the boring stuff first. So what is a narrative? The definition of a narrative is basically really unfinished. If you look at this behind me, this is like narrative is a bunch of informations that collide in they're just continued, and it's a structure of information that creates a story and blah 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 blah. And this is really not this is the way an engineer looks at a narrative. And it's, if you go to the gaming industry, this is something that narrative also looks like, which I have a big problem with. Because there is a department called narrative design, and they write all the dialogues and some basic plot lines, and they're segmented into this department. And then there is a different department that builds the models, and then there is a different department that does the animations, and then there is programmers, and then there is a mechanic, and such and such. It's a really simple way to create a factory so you can have an industry. My problem with it is that not a lot of people are really conscious and have the awareness that we are all a part of the narrative. Not in a sense of the industry, like what your particular job is, more in a sense as humans. Because narrative is something that we are built of. It's like you can say that human beings are intelligent, you can say that they are conscious, so are the dolphins. You can say a bunch of things, but one of the things that human beings are unique for is that they are able to create these scenarios in their head. They have an experience and then they bring this experience in and then they think about it and then they think about scenarios. So, okay, if the thing hits again, maybe the fire will happen again. So if that happens, I should look and then there is fire. And if I keep this fire burning and such and such and such, we are the only beings that we know of that are able to create scenarios that are 10 years ahead, 20 years ahead, analytical thinking, call it whatever you want. That's narrative. Not only that we are able to think about these things and to see it logically, we also feel these things. And the whole thing about the narrative is that if I write a story and you create a character or a creature, and then the animator animates it, and then somebody does the lighting, and then somebody composes everything together, each one of these parts is as equally important as the creature I have written in. And the thing that I'm seeing, not locally, but globally, is that there is I mean, you see these movies that look really amazing and photorealistic, and you can see that a lot of work has been done into them, but they're just these scenes that don't make sense. So let's go back to the narrative. I wanted to do a little simple explanation of how narrative actually works for each of us, and not only for each of us, like for us as human beings, not as individuals. So I selected as something anybody can relate to. This is a narrative behind me. Usually when we say narrative, we think of stories, we think of media manipulation, or I don't know, some sort of mindset that is being blah, 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 blah. This is a narrative. It's a narrative of a simple thunder. I don't know, do you still do this? I do this, but when you were kids, did anybody told you that you should count when you see the lighting before the thunder hits, like 1, 2, 3? This gets me back to can you remember your first thunderstorm that you seen for the first time? Thank you. I also remember it, and it's there are no parents, there is no apartment, there is no balcony, there is no house. Something is happening, which is unbelievable. It's not only scary, it's in the same time it's scary and it's exciting and it's you wonder how it happens and what is going on, but you can feel everything that you need to feel. You can feel the strike, you can feel the sound, you can feel that there is something bigger than you happening. You can feel that Earth and the land have changed something. You can feel the energy, and it leaves an impression. Even though you don't get the information, what's going on, that's something that you remember. If you don't remember your first, then you surely remember your last, because it's just a confrontation of a man with something that's unbelievable. And now, okay, today, I mean, if you are a kid and you are amazed and you are in awe and you don't know what's going on, a couple of years later you will end up, or parents will tell you, or you will end up in school and you will realize that thunder is this. As the definition 2 slides before said, narrative is a sequence of information put together in one context to tell the story. So this is a story about thunders. We have the positive charge in the clouds, and we have the negative in the middle, and then the positive get back in the land, and blah, 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 blah. These things come together and it happens. If you want to know more about it, Google it. the reason why you probably won't Google it or you haven't already is because it's a straightforward narrative. This is a scientific narrative and approach to one subject. So, and this is really important because if you are trying to recreate a thunderstorm using computer graphics, you will kind of need to know all this so you can understand how it happens and what goes first and what goes next and how it all looks like and how it's real. The problem with that is that you are going to miss this. Long before we knew the laboratory tested objective information of how it happens, the thunder, we still have theories about the thunder. So even though we didn't have the information of it, we had the experience of a thunder, we didn't have the right information, but that didn't stop us from creating a narrative. On the left is a statue of Zeus that throws thunder. On the right is the Slavic god of Perun that you can see the little lightings, or you can't, the little lightings they're inscribed. Two gods of thunder. So in the lack of information, we are going to create our own narratives. This refers to what I said, that people are basically narrative creatures. We cannot function if we don't know something. So we don't know something, it bothers us. If we don't have information to make a conclusion, we will make up information to make a conclusion. The thing that we will use to make this information, even though we don't have them, is the experience we just had, the sensations. So thunder is really explosive, it's powerful, it hits the ground, it makes all kinds of damages, and it's more powerful than us. Therefore, there must be something that is like that. It sounds like a god is throwing these things. Not only that, but on a bunch of these images, when these paintings are made, we still didn't have the right information about how thunder actually works, but it became the part of our narrative nonetheless. We have 3 paintings from 3 different periods. One is the one on the left is the one all the way to the left. That's, I think, 1800s or 1700s. The one above me is 1600s, and above next to me is 1500s. We didn't know how the thunder works back then, yet it came up as a part of our human narrative. You can see the lightning in each one of these paintings. Okay, you cannot see, there is a little lightning on the top of the right one. But it's pretty clear what they are showing. I mean, 2 people running away, I guess they're in love or something like that. They were smooching somewhere when the storm hit them. And each one of these paintings represents how we encompassed through the ages the thunder into our narrative, into our emotion. It had meaning before we had the information. What was it? Visually. And of course, when we come back to the 21st century, even though we have all the information and we know everything about it, and thunder is just some sort of a natural phenomenon, and we know how it occurs, and we have seen it through history, we know there are not gods, it's still like we lack something. That's why this is something that is really popular and that we accept even though we know everything about it. Because the experience of thunder itself, it's not confined to what is going on. Like when you were a kid and you were watching the thunderstorm, you were wondering what is happening, but you weren't actually wondering what is happening. You were experiencing the information with the sensation, and you were having this whole experience that lighten up your narrative mind to create all sorts of things. So basically this is same as this, only this is kind of really simple, but it still lacks the coolness of this. That's why we still have the Thor and the Perun and the Zeus as some of the characters, because this is just simply not enough for us. Basically, to create a narrative, it's not just how you visualize it and represent it scientifically accurate, it's to give it a sense of wonder. It's to give it a sense of the mix of information and blah, 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 blah. Every time when you are looking at a frame or animation and everything, there is a child inside of you asking, okay, what is this? And the big problem that I actually saw and when I first stepped into VFX studio is that there is a lot of people doing great things, but there is a lack of wonder that's missing. And I am not talking this abstractly. I'm actually talking about the real problems, like when somebody is trying to solve a frame that's not just working, or the client has complained, you have done this sequence, I don't know how many times, but there is something missing, and you're looking at it and you're wondering what is missing. Everything is perfect, the rain is falling as it should, the shark is jumping out as it should, everything looks perfect, there is no mistakes, there is no technical, everything is technically perfect, yet somehow this isn't it. And you have all the time. What's missing in each one of this technically perfect stuff is wonder. It's not just cool enough. It only gives you information, and these informations are really exact, but there is no drama. And I'm not talking about the plot, I'm not talking about the dialogue, the drama of a visual experience, the drama of a visual sensation. Oh, this drama. The child looking at a storm and something is happening and I don't know what is happening. Everything is photorealistic, but there is something subconscious, something that turns into. And this is basically why I decided not to talk about the script, because if I did that, we would have to talk about how to create scripts and stories and narrative. And to put it in an engineering term, I try to do this. This is really hard. Like when I think of a story, when I'm working on the script or when I'm working on, I don't know, this presentation, what am I putting in, and what is the formula to make solid and good narratives that actually informs the people and activates the people, and it looks something like this, but it's really to make a narrative you need much more than the information. Now when I say information, I'm not talking about the words. I'm not talking about like this is rain. If you make a picture of rain, if you make it completely perfect, this is information. But so you can use a model, for instance. You can use a model of a human, a man or a woman, and you can say, okay, so this is a man and this is a woman. It doesn't mean anything. It's not a narrative, it's just an information. So you say man and woman are kissing. Okay, that's something. That's because you put in emotion. But man and, if you think of in terms of models, man and woman kissing, that's not that's something, that's an action, that's something they do. To create an emotion, you have to give it some timing, you have to make it sweet, you have to make them kiss and then pull off and then kiss again really quickly. Now you can tell that they're in love, that they're smooching. So you add emotion. And once you add the timing of that, and once you have emotion and the information, then maybe you can stimulate a sensation in a sense that the picture that you are seeing in an animation that's added to it kind of taps into the minds of the viewers, and they remember their first kisses, and then they're like, ah, yes, I can feel this in my own body, what you have shown on the screen. But it's still not a narrative, that's just an act. What you have to do is to activate emotional plus cognitive, and then as the two of them are kissing, then they stop and she turns. And now you're like, okay, something is happening. I feel that kissing was good, but then she's turning away. Maybe they are setting apart. Maybe they are saying their farewells. Maybe the love has died. Maybe something happened. And basically you have a man that's now, or a woman, that's activated in emotionally and cognitively, and you are giving him the narrative. And if you finish this scene, so if two models created in a program kiss and then smooch, but suddenly one of them walks away, and then you continue the scene as you see one of them stays and the other one goes into the whiteness, now you have created an experience. Similar to the one that I mentioned in the beginning with Sarah Connor witnessing the apocalypse and the death of everyone and falling apart. Once you have created an experience, this experience is something that you can perceive as a viewer as real. And when I say viewer, this is viewer, reader, player, whatever interactor with the narrative. The forms are really wide. You can take any medium to immerse yourself within, but all of this stays. So if you are reading the book like on a page with simple letters that you have to imagine in your head, if the thing is good, it will activate everything. You won't just read informations, you will actually input in yourself emotions that a writer has put in. You will input the situation, you will activate your mind so you can imagine this whole thing. So finally, when Bella and Edward break apart, you will be crushed, not because they broke apart, because none of you has ever been, I hope, in a relationship with a vampire, but you will do it because you have felt lost yourself, and this scene just tap into your personal vault of emotions. The same thing happens, or okay, maybe not the same thing. The worst things happens if you watch Twilight, because there is somebody who's actually directing this, and the way that you imagine this in your head, and the way that you yourself tap into your vault of emotions and experiences to bring it out was maybe better. I'm most definitely sure it was better when you were reading than when you were seeing the actual movie. And this also happens when that's basically the thing. Every medium plays with your emotions, in a sense that here you are the director, you are the visualizer, you are the animator, you are everything. When you read a book, when you watch a movie, everything has been done for you, which is sometimes better because you get all of this condensed in a visual medium, but sometimes it just loses on its value. And that's where people, the CGI artists actually come in, and that's what I was trying to point out when I was working with animators, and I was working with composing artists, when I was working with dynamic people, when I was working with illustrators. It's not, usually it all goes down to a form. How does it look? Does it look good enough? Does it look, is it perfect enough? And the touch of how does this work for our narrative is lost. And what we can see basically in the whole industry, both gaming and VFX, is this strong drive to photorealism. And this drive makes much logic, because as we said before, you remember your first thunder or your last thunderstorm, and you already know what emotions you have. So if I can replicate a photorealistic image of that, I'm surely going to activate your vault of emotions. So, this is thunder. I know how thunder makes me feel. So what we need for audience to feel in this scene is that they should be really frightened of thunder. And the cheapest way, we will take a shortcut, and we will make it like, okay, make it photorealistic so they can figure out themselves what they should feel in this thunderstorm. So if a girl is, if you have a slasher movie and a girl is walking into a cabin in the wood and it's raining outside, okay, now I see this, I remember these kind of things from my life, I should feel frightened. Which is great unless every movie does the same thing. And it usually happens, I mean, I did this myself when I was producing different different commercials and things, and I was working with different sorts of animators. It doesn't matter if they are 2D or if it's 3D or something. When you don't know what to say to a CGI artist, usually you just like say, as a producer, let it be normal. Just make a normal thunderstorm. Just make a normal rain, normal water, a normal shark attack. You know how dinosaur would normally attack a shark, or how normally sharks attack the planes, and just make it normal, make it photorealistic. And the problem with that is that we don't know what's real, because we know how thunders are made, but we don't feel them like that. We don't feel the exchange of energy. We feel a whole bunch of these narrative thoughts. We feel the Zeus and the Thor and the parent. Somewhere back in our head, somebody is throwing stuff at us that is exploding. And when you just make it real, these things tend to disappear. And we come to the, when you tell any CGI artist that, or any technician, I mean, to just make it real, then we have a discussion on what's real. And I chose Lion King as an example because, I mean, you don't have to agree with me. I think the 2D animated film was really better. Not only because it's part of my memory, it's because it actually lost something in the translation. Precisely because of realism. Because as cartoon characters, they really were, when they were drawing them, I mean, both of these pictures were drawn, in a sense. The difference is that at the first one on the left, or better this, on the left picture, we know everything about this guy. You don't have to watch Lion King to know everything about the scar on the left. You can see it in his eyes. You can see not only that he's a villain, you can see that he's an intelligent villain. You can see that this guy is up to something. You can see the jealousy. You can see, I mean, even without the colors of his green eyes, you can tell that these eyes were green inside. On the right one, you see a lion. And it's a scary lion, and I wouldn't like to see this lion in person, especially not if my father has just died and I am crushed emotionally, so he comes up to console me. But you can see this lion, but it's just a lion. It doesn't give anything. The fact that this lion in the movie is going to talk and said some sentences that lead the narrative is not giving you the same thing as on the left one. The photorealism robbed the whole character of the narrative that he has. This is just a scary lion. And the movie cannot have the same emotional impact if you go with it that, okay, there are people who never seen the 90s version. You have new generations, and let's say that they have looked up only on CGI versions. It's not the same. It's not as precise, and it's not as good looking. So not good looking, it's not as exact looking. It doesn't fit, the right story doesn't fit the narrative, even though it's perfect. I mean, and the whole thing is that when you work in structured organizations that have strict pipeline, where you do tasks that are really repetitive, and basically not only repetitive in a sense what you do, it's much more what is asked of you to do. So create me, the studio was hired to create, I don't know, a shipwrecking sequence. So what we need for a shipwrecking sequence? We need a ship model, we need to make water, simulate the water flow to be perfect, we need to make rain and the thunders, and we need to see a ship breaking on an iceberg or something like that. That's the same scene, that's, if you look at it in elements, it's the same scene as if the task was, okay, let's make a shark attack. So we have the water dynamics, we have the simulations, we have a different model, but maybe we had a model of a shark somewhere lying there when we were making the shipwrecking scene. And all the tasks seem repetitive, and all the tasks seem the same, and they are reused and templated and everything else, which is fine, except what was the scene about? Why is this sea at a shark attack different than wild sea that's crushing the boat? And this is not something that you need to read a script to get that information. This is something where you actually need to get inside of a visual narrative. We are not talking about a sequence. We are talking just about one frame. So when you see a one frame, as we saw back on those paintings, these are all funders, but they all carry different emotions. And this is something where individually, each artist, it doesn't matter that they work in a system, it doesn't matter that they work in a pipeline, each artist has a chance to make a contribution to the narrative. So I come back to that, what can you do for the narrative instead of what can this do for you? And this awareness that you are not doing a mundane task, you are not just animating an arm or a leg or whatever, you are in fact creating the scene. Each little detail, when it comes together in a bunch of frames, will create the narrative that some of my colleagues, back in Hollywood actually wrote about. It's the same when we talk about games, it's the same for narrative design. Narrative design cuts through every other pipeline, because if you don't know what the dialogue is, or if you haven't read the biography of the character, and I'm talking about, I don't know, Warcraft 3, where characters are really small, or even less, a Mario, where these are just 2D pixels in a line. If you don't know what we are doing in a whole sense, what is the narrative, what are we trying to achieve, not what the script is, not what the screenwriters did. There is no screenwriter in original Mario. But is there something that, what can you do to push this narrative and to understand what is going on so you can make your own addition to this thing? It doesn't fit good. Especially about games. If you don't know what your character is about, you cannot do his animations. If you haven't realized which type of brave knight your knight is, how do you know how to animate it? I mean, we go back to the real. Okay, animate it like he's a real knight. That doesn't mean anything. What is real? The narrative determines what the real action is. And I made an example for that problem of realism with two different tasks. The same problems on two different movies in completely different times. So basically, when people have said, we have an evil creature, that was the task, and we need to make it scary, and we should make it photorealistic, because photorealistic monsters are scarier than something that people don't understand. That's how this happened. And basically, this is insisting on realism, even though, I mean, why? Why is his face real? Why did it have to be real? This is from The Mummy, and as you know, considered one of the worst CGI moments ever. The same problem they had in the 70s. The Ralph Bakshi, who did the original Lord of the Rings animated movie, he did the same thing, but differently. This is how orcs look like in his animated movie. And what I'm trying to point out is both of these shots are bad CGI. The difference is that Bakshi was an author and a director, and he was an animator himself, so he had a direct control, and he knew how to use a bad CGI. Originally, he didn't want orcs to look like this. He just wanted to cut them in, but something happened in the process of putting live footage, so they came up all in negative and stuff. This is bad, and this will give you nightmares, as it should, because orcs are really evil. Orcs are not like this. How many years later we had a Lord of the Rings from Jackson, and he had these masks that were real. They weren't as scary as these orcs were in the 70s. This is how I imagine orcs. And they served for the same, the plot was the same, the characters was the same, they were using the same thing as before. So basically the thing was that one of them actually knew what he was doing, in a sense that he was using the narrative as a baseline to build his animation around it, and the other studio was just assisting. We need a real Scorpion King, we need a rock's face, we needed to make it real, that will be scary, which turned out really badly because of, I mean, there's a whole story why, but it's not like how the final shots as products turned up. It's the principle of things. And what a lot of times when I visit different studios, what I see is a bunch of people arguing about realism of this and how would it work, and is this like this, and they're looking at a reference, and then they're looking at their work and they're like, okay, this is the same, this is what we made, this is a good thing. But usually it makes for a really bad narrative when you look at a whole thing, and then somebody's like, okay, so this is just a scene. And this is the way that that I see that a lot of people that are working in the industry actually came in with the aspirations that were similar to mine, like, oh my god, I'm going to make these worlds that don't exist, and then I'm going to turn them into something real. I saw a thunder, now I'm going to make a Thor. Instead, it all turns down to, I saw a thunder, I forgot about the Thor, now I'm just making a Britannica explanation infographic of how thunder works. And everybody's going along with it, not just only in the sense of CGI. I mean, this neglect of narrative happens all across our mediums, from games to movies to theater to a bunch of things, because people are just pushing for the different forms that nobody have seen to attract something, and everybody's forgetting that it's not about how the shot looks, it's more about how the frame feels. So basically that's it. That's what I wanted to tell you.
Thank you for that great presentation, and now we have some time for questions.
Hey everybody, my name is Alexander Manja from Level Up Serbia and All Future. Ivana, it's great to see you before the speaker booth. It's a huge pleasure, actually, and thank you for your talk. It's a very short question. Can you? It's not actually not a question. It's more of a. I would like to ask something of you. Can you talk just a little bit about the misconceptions between what's narrative and narration? Because to me personally, there's a big like disconnect between these two, although they do kind of belong to the same meaning in a certain way, but a narration is not the same thing as a narrative. So if you can just kind of deconstruct this a little bit and touch on that topic. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Manja. Well, basically the whole presentation was actually about that. Thank you for summarizing it for me. Where were you 2 hours ago? The thing about the narrative is a mix, as I said before, of different elements. Some of them are visual, some of them are informational, audible. Narration is basically explaining what's going on a different medium, just guiding you through it. So if you have any scene, or if you have, let's talk about games. If you have a game, because games are really much more immersive than films. But if you have a game, it's not just who your character is. Is he a cowboy? Is he a knight? Is he a princess with a sword saving the world? That's one part of it. How it moves, how it acts, how fun is it when he or she slashes their sword? That's one part of it. The other part of it, what is the world around them? What world has been built? And only then you come to the narration, like what is she saying? What are characters saying? What is the plot? When the script, it's hard to explain it really in such a few words. But if you write a script and you say, okay, this is a man that is in his 50s and he's part of a gang and he's tired of his criminal life and now he would like to retire, but everything is going against him, that's narration. I just explained you the plot. And when I describe him like this, we know that this man, since he is tired of everything and he's old and he's feeling his body disintegrating, we know how he talks. He talks slowly and he does this, and he's seen everything, so he's pretty bored, like so many fathers out there, and he knows it all and nothing excites him. So you know his dialogue. But to create a narrative is to make somebody feel like him, not to watch him, but to actually experience him. And if you wanted to do that, for example, in the game, then it's not just how he looks and how he talks, it's also how his stamina, it's also in the mechanic, how his stamina falls down from time to time. So basically, he doesn't have, everybody's faster than you, and then you have to catch up to them. You fall down all the time. If he gets sick, he gets hungry all the time. Everything that immerses you into this world, and how other people treat him, how NPCs talk to him, and a bunch of stuff. So basically, after 5 minutes, or not 5 minutes, maybe 5 hours of playing as a middle-aged, tired man that's escorted, that has a teenage girl asking him questions, and you are fighting zombies, you can actually feel like, oh, won't just everybody leave me alone?
Okay, hello. So I am just finishing with my studies, and I have a question. What would you recommend to people who are interested in narrative design but don't know how to step into that world?
I'm not sure. I'm still asking myself that. You should start. I think the biggest thing that you need to do is educate yourself. And I mean, there are a lot of books about it. There are a lot of even better YouTube channels about it. I don't know, Extra Credits, I would highly recommend everything that they did, especially the old episodes where they were dealing with the basics. And once you do that, and once you kind of get into that, maybe you should try to do something on your own on spec.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and send a lot of CVs.
Anyone else? Any more questions?
Okay, since you mentioned extra credits, do you have any other like online tools or sources or whatever that you could recommend to people?
For narrative?
Yeah, for narrative.
For narrative design? Well, no, just Extra Credits, that's it. No, there I can remember on top of my head, what was the name of the YouTube channel? He was reviewing games, Signal, Aaron Signal, thank you. Aaron Signal does a great games review, but he does it from the constructionist side. So basically, he reverse engineering the game that he's talking about, and you can really feel it. There is, I can't remember where I picked up. Also, there is a great thing when you talk about narrative designs. Everything basically that's connected to writing. because the narrative design is not that much different from screenplay writing. It's not that much different from copywriting and everything that you need to create a structure. Even some people usually say that game design is different because you have branching, I don't know, different branching plots, so you have to think about multiple endings and whatnot. Most of the games actually don't have that. They have straight line stories that maybe have one or two diversions that they go, but it's really good to everything that you can learn about screenwriting. Save the Cat or I don't know, a bunch of other books. I can say the Hero's Journey, where you can learn about characters, and McAfee, that you can actually learn about the different plotting templates that you can use. Everything will come in together when you start making a game, because basically how to build a character is the same for every medium. And then how to build a scene is really the same for every medium. And I'm not talking about cinematics, I'm talking about situations that he goes in, what he will do, what weapon, what will he pull. The world building is basically the same across everything. So, higher education.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, if that's it, then once again, thank you for the lovely presentation,
you
and
for
I
having
would
me.
like to thank every one of you for joining us today.